A show doesn't have to be funny to keep people coming back week after week. Some are popular because they turn up the heat and keep us on the edge of our seats. Any show can be intense and catch us by surprise, and once again, Reddit users chimed in with their take on the most intense TV shows over the years. In this video, we will discuss the most intense TV episodes ever made. First off, Offred from The Handmaid's Tale. When an intense show comes out of its corner swinging, it can sometimes wholly floor people who need more time to be ready. One user had to turn off the show because it was too realistic. They said they couldn't even get through the first episode. Men are put to death for crimes that may not have happened, but the show focuses mainly on the pain of women who are tortured, mutilated, or killed for crimes as minor as making fun of a warden. It's a show about fascist systemic control, especially over women's bodies, and who owns them, so of course it's going to be tough. The political messages are at the show's heart, but for many, they were just too much to handle. Starting with a bang, the first episode doesn't ease into its ideas. Instead, it jumps right into some of the darkest parts of the show, showing how society is getting more and more like the evil patriarchy. Up next, Why We Fight from Band of Brothers. Band of Brothers was always going to have intense moments because of how brutal war is. Most of us still think about how realistic Saving Private Ryan was, so it makes sense to ask, how would Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg find a new way to show World War II combat without doing what they or others have already done? In Band of Brothers, the answer comes quickly. Men came and went, getting hurt or dying in fierce fighting only to be replaced by others who would suffer the same fate. But one episode in particular made us cry. When they found that concentration camp, a Reddit user wrote about Band of Brothers. They could remember the details but not the name. In the second to last episode of the miniseries, the characters are at each other's throats after spending months on the front lines. This episode has some of the best parts of the show. The discovery of the concentration camp completely changes the story and reminds us and the characters that the war was about much more than ideas. Followed by The Body from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The best Buffy the Vampire Slayer episodes could be simultaneously funny, scary, and fun. On the surface, the show's a monster of the week type about a girl who kills vampires. But in reality, Buffy's a show about what it means to be human. It looks at what it means to live through the lens of monsters. But The Body turned up the tension and came out of nowhere. One Reddit user said it still bothered him because it came out of nowhere and was so realistic that it messed you up. As Buffy and her friends slash their way through vampires and monsters, death's almost treated as a joke on the show. But Buffy's mother's sudden death from natural causes hit her like a punch in the gut. The scene's done so well that it shocks the audience. As they slowly pick their jaws up off the floor, they're left alone in the cold silence. Moving on to The We Are from Severance. Severance, a groundbreaking show on Apple TV Plus, could be called a slow burn, but the first season's last episode is anything but. The show messes with your mind and mixes genres. Even though it's based on science fiction, it's also many other things, like a workplace comedy, a social commentary, a conspiracy mystery, and a psychological thriller with twists that keep you on the edge of your seat. A deleted user felt strongly about the episode when they said the first season's last episode kept them on the edge of their seats, and we couldn't agree more. The We Are builds up our hopes just as everything's coming to a head, only to break them in the end. The episode's emotional roller coaster is almost cruel in how much tension it builds, and it does a great job of continuing the ideas to ensure there will be more seasons. Next, Who Goes There from True Detective. True Detective takes great pleasure in making a dark, cynical, and oppressive world. The jumps from one time period to another are beautiful and dreamlike. The show moves steadily, but it never seems to drag. Even minor characters have room to move around and feel like they have their own lives. Who Goes There is usually considered the best episode of True Detective's first season, which was full of great ones. One Reddit user, HeroGamer555, didn't have much to say, so they just wrote the episode's title and let that speak for itself. When Cole goes undercover in a way that isn't part of his job, we get the impression that he's completely lost touch with reality. Even though the technical quality of the episode's last scene's praised, it's also a tense moment in which Cole gets lost during a criminal raid. Every episode of the show was tense, but Who Goes There was the most nerve-wracking of all. Not to mention, The Day Will Come When You Won't Be from The Walking Dead. One of the best things about the show is how interesting it is to watch the characters fight to stay alive. Most of them are ordinary people who led very different lives before. Now they all have to deal with huge problems, like losing people they care about and finding a place to live and food to eat. But that's also what makes the show authentic. We always knew that it would make us feel a wide range of emotions, whether it was the gore that shocked them or the zombies that scared them. When Reddit user FlyboyZA wrote about the brutal death of Season 7, they were thinking of a specific episode. The show had never been afraid to kill off its main characters quickly and violently, but The Day Will Come When You Won't Be almost seemed to enjoy how horrible it was. The last episode of the 6th season ended on a tense cliffhanger, and the first episode of the 7th season not only kept the same tone, but somehow made it even better. Let's learn more about out Plan and Execution from Better Call Saul. All of the Breaking Bad shows had a way of making people nervous, and Better Call Saul was no different. It's a must-watch TV show because it has twists, turns, and jaw-dropping reveals in each of its 63 episodes. It's also a prequel that's just as good as, if not better, than the source material. It has rich background stories about old characters and new characters with complicated morals. Another user picked out Plan and Execution as the most intense episode. Jimmy was always over his head, but during the mid-season 6 finale, all of his sneaky plans came together. In this episode, he gets into a mess, works his way out of it, and then gets into an even bigger mess than before. From the beginning to the end, Plan and Execution never let up the gas.
Howard? Howard!
To talk.
Really no need to...
Coming up, Beyond Life and Death from Twin Peaks. Even though Twin Peaks is now considered one of the best TV shows of all time, it was not a popular show by the end of its second season. But one user did find something to like when they wrote that the last hour of the second season was the craziest hour of TV they'd ever seen. After the mystery storyline was thrown away, the show limped along until the ending ultimately saved it. Dale Cooper enters a nightmare dream world where he enters the world of metaphysics. This confused and scared us. Even though the cliffhanger wasn't solved for years, the original ending of Twin Peaks was still satisfying. Next, My Screw Up from Scrubs. Scrubs was a hilarious comedy show, but that didn't mean it couldn't devastate us at any time. When one user wrote the title of this episode, they were thinking of a very intense episode. Scrubs tried to show what it was like to be a doctor by showing the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of the job. Working in a hospital means seeing people die, but JD was put under more pressure because of a mistake that was thought to have been made. The sudden change in tone threw us for a loop, and as well as laughing, there were a lot of tears. Finally, Ozymandias from Breaking Bad.
Yo, so what's next? We wait.
The last season of Breaking Bad might have been the best TV ever, and it kept our hearts firmly in its grasp week after week. Ozymandias was a pretty intense episode according to one user. Walt's plans fall apart in this episode, making him the full-fledged bad guy of the story. The ticking clock's enough to make our hearts race, and every new twist is like a twist of the knife in their hearts. Ozymandias was like the best thrill ride in the world and made your heart beat fast. And on that note, that's a wrap for this video. Which of these episodes was the most intense and thrilling for you? Are there any episodes we should have included? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.